It was about 4 o'clock in the morning. I was going through some difficulty. It happens every now and then. And then I got stuck. And as I got stuck, one idea popped up and it changed the view tremendously. And after that, I'm trying to organize what that insight was. So after 6, 7 hours, and I still haven't totally digested or have any ability to say anything, it came to the point that I want to try. So, what is that thought, the insight I was talking about? It is the saying that says something like that: to know all is to forgive all. And that's the phrase that I picked up maybe 30, 40 years ago, even when I was reading a book, I believe, of Daisetsu Suzuki, a Zen scholar. And I have read tons of his books, you know, and it's one of the little anecdote, I guess, from Miss Okamura, Mihoko Okamura-san. I've known her quite well. And somewhere there was a saying, he said that if you know that meaning of what that is, which says to know all is to forgive all, you don't need to do anything. That's what he mentioned. That was in Japanese. I thought the translation was something like those who know all would forgive all, or something like that. And he said that was French proverb. So I just picked up internet and then searched for it, and there are many interesting ones, and there may be 3, 4 different sources which says the similar thing. And one was French proverb, and the other one was Tolstoy, and also the Buddha may have said. So that's what I found. And maybe there are more. So what is that insight? And why I thought about it so powerful? Let me first explain my experience at 4 o'clock in the morning. At the time, I was trying to figure out, solve a problem, and I couldn't. And the solution up to that point is not to do anything because I cannot solve it. And if that's the case, I let myself go and be in the moment. That's how insight pops up with calm and quiet mind, sort of like connecting to the source. I put the video just a while ago. This is yesterday, I believe. And if you're at the root of being, what does that mean? That's an interesting expression, but it's outside of your mind and be connected to your original being. Let's call it like that. Your mind is peaceful, calm, and you feel, according to Eckhart Tolle, I believe I feel the same. There's energy field, or there's no mind, empty mind, calm and quiet mind, and you're connected to the universe, so to speak. So there's no thought. And in that space, time of now, you find peace. That was the video I was talking about, finding or discovering the root of who we are. You know, in today's world and all the different information and issues to work on, the point is to know ourselves and down to the depth of who we are is important. And that video took some time to process it, but this is another one taking time. But it's almost like overlaying to what I said in that video about finding the root, or discovering the root, or discovering the foundation of our being. So in that video, I was talking about let go of myself, my thought, everything, and let the universe speak, or heart to speak, so to speak, and then the insight will come out. So the insight I got and that triggered to make that video was related to, again, the problem, but by letting go of it and not doing anything and be with that source of who we are, that's what it is. So no big deal. I resolved that for about a week. And then this morning, again, I start to think about the similar issue that I had, the hurdles, the problems, and I couldn't solve it. So I was going through the same process to let go and be free and peaceful. What happened in this case is that I was still processing it the best I could by doing nothing. That the Taoism too, when you do nothing, things happen. The wisdom pops up. The calm and quiet mind, the Shila Samadhi Panya, it all point that if you are occupied in the mind and solve the problem, you cannot solve the problem, then you let go, and down deep in your consciousness, something happens, almost self-organizing the information in a manner like a nature would do to come up with a solution, the wisdom. So in this case, I was doing the same thing, except it was more tenacious, and I know how to do it. So I was persevering to go through that, going back to the source and all that. And then I still try. And then this idea popped up all of a sudden, which is Daisetsu's word. He lived like 80 years ago, whatever, and he may have found that proverb in France and thought that, like he said, if you know that proverb, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to know anything. And the proverb again is, for those who know all would forgive all. So when that thought popped up, what I did is to go into my mind, so to speak. And then I realized that, as I mentioned, that two universes. There's the me in the mind and the universe outside, so to speak, or incorporating me as a part of the universe. So there is that big me, so to speak, and myself. So there's a relationship of big me and me. The God and yourself, you can call that, or law of nature and you in the mind. So there is that the dialogue, so to speak, or dialectic process, so going back and forth and have the alignment, so to speak, and then you two, or me too, get down to the root of who we are. The thought then gave me another viewpoint, which is when you go into that space or the root of who you are, there's you as me, and then big me out there, the universe, heart, God, whatever. You let go, so you are in the moment, the being in the moment. And calm and quiet mind, there's nothing there, emptiness, nothingness. And then the light shines, and so to speak, and then you resolve it. Yourself melting, and then find peace. That's at home, that I mentioned before, and then you have the peace in the space, because there's nothing. It's absolute state because there's nothing there, but you're letting go of yourself. So what happens is all the natures, all the things that are out there is nothing but you. You became that nothingness of as it isness. As it isness. As the nature or anything is happening at the moment, and you become one. Therefore, there's no good and bad, life and death, past and future, but you are in that being, the state of being. And that's the savior, so to speak, or the release. And that relate to my awakening experience and also tied to the Tolstoy's experience of awakening, which I talked elsewhere. And then I revisited that situation. And then because of that quote from Daisetsu, I now look at the situation from God's perspective, if you call that, or from that state of being to look at myself in the mind. Previously, I was looking from my me and the little me, whatever, and trying to let go of it. And you're happy in that state at home, finding there. But this time, I'm looking not just being there, but looking backward about my mind or myself. And that's the moment that I connected, that the insight was that that's the compassion of God, if you call that, or the word, one who know all will forgive all. So that's the source of entity, if you call that, although you can call it nothingness, or it's just the way it is. It's the state of being at the time, and that's total emptiness, vast emptiness, stillness, and there may be the energy field or the vibration throughout your body, and you're immersed in it, and there's nothing you can do, and you're floating, so to speak, and there's joy or being of who we are as original being, as it is. But then, like I said, if you look from that space or being state to me, you can see this big me can see me, small me, as trying this and that and figuring out the way out and come up with an insight and do this and that again and again and again. So that's the process of learning who we are and be having an insight or the wisdom to come up and then reintroduce that wisdom in life and keep on moving. But now from looking at from the other space of that being, you see the whole picture, so to speak, of me trying and going back and forth. We can call it Sila Samadhi Panya or plan, do, check, act, starting from check, plan, do, act, and trying to keep on climbing up the mountain, so to speak, or learn the skills and be the master of the skills so that you can self-organize, self-manage yourself to live your life. And that's the little me or me playing. If you can picture that in the screen, there's that passage, this guy may go this way or that way, and then you get hit, come back to the root of who you are, and then find another way, because repeating the same mistake doesn't make sense. So you come back and then come up with another plan to check act cycle of Sila Samadhi Panya. You learn the lesson of what to do, you do it next time, and you hit the wall again, then you come back and revisit so that you can keep on learning as an individual. So it's an endless process and continuous improvement. That's why the plan, do, check, act, plan, do, I wrote in the books and have that in practice in management, across the whole company. Plan, do, check, act has a heartbeat across the board. And with that transparency idea, I call it the glass wall management instead of brick wall. The whole organization start to develop this self-organizing process across the whole body and organization so that everything is synced and vibrating. And that's the analogy of me in myself, me and mini and mini me, but this case is organization at the top and then the mini company and the mini company and so on and so forth. So it's similar structure that is connecting to each other. In the case of individual, there's the cells and the heart and lung and kidney, whatever, and then there's a customer supply relationship. It's a decentralized way of managing without anybody telling what to do. So it's just the empowering process of all the cells of the body. And when you awaken that cell, the body is all activated, feel happy about it because they can express what they can. That's the individual's case. But in the organization's case, it's the same thing happens, that instead of the bureaucracy and top-down and lots of brick wall, there's a transparency. So the pain is felt throughout the organization by anyone. They self-organize it, address it, so that whole organization starts to function. And if it happened in the individual, that's a very healthy state. Instead of mind consuming itself to figure out what to do. And okay, you have such a big brain to use it, but if you can decentralize lots of that into the lower level or deeper into your consciousness to utilize the best of what we can instead of just occupying a small piece of it and struggling and hitting the wall, but incorporating everything we've got to the root of our existence, the foundation of being, then of course something can happen as a way of nature, because that's how the nature took place for us to be human and living out of the dust of universe for whatever combination, and the combination continues in us from the letters and the chimpanzee to human being with a brain, and now even possibly extending to AI. There's another story to go with it. I'm not going to go into it, but that's the kind of a progression, if you call that evolutionary process, if we can do it right with certain idea, concept, principle. So that idea of PDCA and going right and left and coming back and learning from the core and going back to the root. And I was thinking about Ray Dalio had some pictures, and he has the same idea. He doesn't call it plan, do, check, act, or starting with check, CAPD I call it. He used different term, but he has this analogy of the guy on the boat and hitting the rock, coming back and figure out what's the best way. And through that process of circulating of the PDCA process, like, or Shila Samadhi Panya, the same thing, coming up with insight. And that's the principle he suggested to do in his talk. I think it's called the principle or something like that. You can find on the YouTube. I can put it as in my comment for this video. So that's the structure of me and mini-me, or, if you follow that kind of logic, that there's a PDCA at the bigger level and a smaller level, and because of the customer-supply relationship, we connect each other. And if you go deeper into the individual, and then you have this tremendous big data of what you got in your life, and when you're sleeping, those would start to self-organize and coming up to the dream, or maybe 4 o'clock in the morning, like I had it, that I had some issue that I couldn't solve it, and resting in the bed and talking to myself, okay, I'll do this, and I let go, and then be in the now, and deeper into my consciousness and the free. It doesn't work, okay, well, try again. And then came up with this, to know all is to forgive all. So from that point of the root, if I call it, let's call it the root consciousness or something, or maybe God or the nature's way or the law, it's the nature's way, and that's what the Taoism talk about, wu wei, no action. Things happen by itself, self-organize itself from the dust to the human being into the future. There's a source of creativity that we can benefit from. So if you look from that point of view, of course there's that Jesus Christ saying that forgive them for they don't know what they're doing, right? That's a powerful statement, and that's totally compassion. And that's the same as I see it, the word, the phrase, to know all is to forgive all. If you don't know it, from the point of view of Jesus or God, you are forgiven. So when you're forgiven, there may be different ways to say it. You may gain the insight or wisdom, or you may totally be forgiven because you do your best, and that's what it is. You accept it, and you're forgiven. You let go. So the picture I had is that I was looking at myself in the analogy of the river, a passage, go to the right or left, and you hit the wall, come back, and try another one, and PDCA, and trying to go farther to achieve what you want to achieve or live the best you can. If you look at the situation from individual's point of view, that looks like a plan, do, check, act, or Shila Samadhi Panya, or whatever way you call it. It's a continuous way of learning. And the AI does the same thing. More big data, more learning. You synthesize the information to come up with the wisdom so you can do better. And over time, you be the master of that skill. So repetition, the PDCA, the functioning of this learning process accelerated many times would lead you to become so that you become the master of that area. Whatever that area may be, it could be a surfing or painting or management or living life. And the mini company is that process that in the organization at all the levels and connecting to each other so that the whole organization can be empowered and find the destiny as they go. I talked about Tenmei, order from heaven. That's also another thought that was trying to capture that you go through that learning, awakening, the Satori, enlightenment, and over that you start to learn what the way of nature. So you become connected to the order from heaven, so to speak. So you know what direction and what's the process and what's the way that you can and be the master of your destiny. So I'm kind of jumping around. I realize that. But there's a common theme behind it that if you look from the individual point of view, to let go and learn and have the wisdom is one. And if you also look from the other point of view of the God or the way of nature, it's like looking at yourself in the screen, but you are looking at yourself from the big me point of view. That little me is troubled here and there and struggling and can't solve it. What do you do? It's like a children learning and doing the best. And every now and then they get enlightened and be happy about it, but then hit again the wall. And you are like a parent. Like a big me and the little me relationship is like one who knows and the other who doesn't. And lose the toy or break the toy and be crying and nothing you can do. And there's a compassionate feeling from those. And that's what I think Tolstoy or that proverb in France or Buddha was talking that according to this web search, there are many of the quote saying that the Buddha was the one. I'm sure there are many other people who said it. It's the foundation of the compassion. And the compassion is part of the nature's way. And you let go of the situation and cover up with the warm, loving sense. It's okay. You are forgiven. Even if you don't know what you're doing, that's human nature. And that's the appreciation, the sense of appreciation coming with a compassionate sense, which may not be obvious because it's not written on the software or presentation on PowerPoint. None of that. And I was talking about this Antoine Exupery. What is important is invisible. The same thing. But when you feel it, then you know it. And you can see that happening. Okay, so that's pretty much the whole story of it. Because a story is just a story, like I said in other videos or voice memo. Conceptual understanding doesn't mean anything in actually living our life. Unfortunately, we cannot see invisible. So we put something on the PowerPoint or YouTube, some word, who said that, why he said that, how you should interpret it, and all the lectures and preaching may go through. But it's like things up in the air going with the wind. You hear it and goes away. May not register. Like the word that Daisetsu mentioned 20, 30 years ago, I felt that was profound, but I didn't get the sense of what he really meant, probably. I felt something, but it was the conceptual understanding of it. But now, having a hard time at 4 o'clock in the morning and revisiting the simple word, that was earth-shaking experience, because I was limiting myself. Try to save it with this technique or that technique to gain the wisdom by this technique and that technique. It's kind of like a typical children playing with a toy. And we only know a little bit of the truth as a limited being, but I hope there's some sense that we can gain. Well, the word I use that we can gain, if you gain it, you lose it. So to realize perhaps maybe a better way to keep being aware, awakened. And I think probably that's the core message, which is kind of similar to what I said in the other video. Talk is cheap. I didn't say it that way, but that's pretty much it. That all the things on the PowerPoint, what is invisible, may be most important. Thank you.